The cliffs of Cornwall were never meant to be a place of salvation. They were a grave. Lady Selina Vance knew that when she stole the stallion from her father's stables. She wasn't running to something. She was running from a secret so dark it would shatter the aristocracy. But just as the edge of the precipice came into view, she realized she wasn't alone. She expected the shouts of guards or the screams of her father. Instead, she heard nothing. Only the rhythmic, thundering beat of a second horse matching hers perfectly. She turned, expecting a savior, and found a monster. The Duke of Blackwood wasn't there to stop her. He was there to make sure she didn't escape her debt. The year was 1842, and the autumn rain in Cornwall felt less like water and more like ice shards against the skin. Lady Selina Vance did not care about the cold. In fact, the numbness spreading through her fingers, clutching the leather reins of the stolen bay stallion, was the only mercy she had been granted in 3 days. The heavy velvet of her ball gown, soaked through and heavy as lead, dragged at her legs, but she urged the horse faster, faster, before they find the letter, before they find the blood. The fog was thick, a suffocating blanket of grey that obscured the road ahead. But Selina knew this path. She had ridden it 1,000 times in her youth, before her father, the Earl of Vance, had sold her future to a man 3 times her age to cover his gambling debts. But it wasn't the marriage to the vile Lord Pearson that had driven her into the night. It was what she had found in Pearson's study 2 hours ago. "Come on!" she screamed into the wind, kicking the stallion's flanks. The horse, a spirited beast named Mercury, snorted and surged forward. The mud flew, coating the hem of her ruined dress. Ahead, the roar of the ocean grew louder, a churning, violent sound that promised oblivion. The cliffs. If she went over, the secret died with her. The scandal would be a tragedy, not a crime. She closed her eyes, preparing for the end. And then she felt it. It wasn't a sound at first. It was a presence, a shift in the air pressure beside her. Selina's eyes snapped open. To her left, emerging from the fog like a phantom, was a massive black charger. It was enormous, a beast of war, its coat absorbing the moonlight, and atop it sat a figure that made the blood freeze in her veins. Julian Thorne, the Duke of Blackwood. He was known in London society as the Silencer. Rumours swirled that he had killed his brother to inherit the title, that his estate was a graveyard of secrets, and that he possessed no heart, only a ledger of debts owed to him. He was not looking at the road. He was looking directly at her. What terrified Selina most was the silence. His horse's hooves struck the soft earth in perfect unison with hers, creating a singular, terrifying rhythm. He didn't shout for her to stop. He didn't reach out to grab her reins. He simply rode. He matched her pace, stride for stride, forcing her closer to the cliff's edge, yet effectively boxing her in. "Go away!" she shrieked, her voice tearing in the wind. "Let me be!" Julian said nothing. His face, sharp-angled and pale, was unreadable in the gloom. He wore no hat, his dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. His eyes were dark voids, fixed on her with a predatory intensity. The cliff edge was 50 yards away. Selina braced herself to pull Mercury hard to the right, to fling herself into the void. But as she tightened her grip, the black charger swerved, not away, but into her. It was a calculated, brutal move. The impact was jarring. Mercury squealed and stumbled, losing momentum. In that split second of chaos, Julian's hand shot out. He didn't grab the reins. He grabbed Selina's waist. With a strength that felt impossible, he ripped her from her saddle. The world spun, sky, mud, cliff, man. Selina hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of her, rolling through the wet grass until she stopped inches from the drop. The roar of the waves was deafening now, spraying salt mist into her face. She scrambled to her knees, gasping, ready to crawl over the edge if she had to. A boot slammed down on the hem of her dress, pinning her to the earth. Selina looked up, trembling, rain blinding her. Julian Thorne towered over her, looking like a statue carved from judgment itself. He wasn't even winded. "You have a very dramatic way of breaching a contract, Lady Selina," Julian said. His voice was deep, devoid of warmth, cutting through the storm. "I have no contract with you," she spat, clawing at the mud. "Let me die. It is none of your concern." On the contrary, Julian crouched down. He didn't touch her, but his proximity was suffocating. He pulled a folded, damp piece of parchment from his coat pocket. Selina stopped breathing. It was the letter. The letter she thought she had burned. The letter that proved her father wasn't just a gambler, but a traitor to the crown, and that she had been complicit in hiding it. "Your father used this to secure a loan from me 3 days ago," Julian said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "He put you up as collateral. If he failed to pay, or if he was arrested for treason, his assets belong to me." He tilted his head, his dark eyes scanning her terrified face. "You are not dying tonight, Selina. You are property of the Blackwood estate, and I do not like it when my property tries to destroy itself." "He sold me?" Selina whispered, the horror outweighing the cold. "To you?" "To anyone who would pay," Julian corrected. "I simply outbid Lord Pearson." He stood up and extended a gloved hand. It wasn't an offer of comfort, it was a command. "Get up, or I will drag you back to Blackwood behind my horse. The choice is yours." The ride to Blackwood Manor was a blur of humiliation and exhaustion. Julian had mounted his horse and pulled Selina up in front of him, his arm locking around her waist like an iron bar. He didn't speak a word for the entire 2-hour journey. She could feel the steady, slow beat of his heart against her back, a stark contrast to the racing panic of her own. She had heard stories of Blackwood Manor. Located on the wildest stretch of the coast, it was a fortress of grey stone that locals avoided. They said the servants were mute, and that the Duke practiced strange sciences in the tower. When the iron gates groaned open, Selina saw no monsters, only desolation. The gardens were overgrown, the statues covered in moss. The house itself was massive, dark and imposing, with only a single light burning in a lower window. Julian halted the horse in the courtyard. He slid down first, then pulled her down. Her legs gave way immediately, her muscles seized from the cold and the ride. He caught her before she hit the cobblestones, sweeping her up into his arms. "I can walk," she protested weakly, though her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely articulate the words. "You can barely stand," he muttered. "And I have no patience for martyrdom." He carried her through the massive oak double doors. Inside, the manor was freezing. The grand foyer was empty, the furniture draped in white sheets like ghosts. There were no servants lined up to greet them. No warmth. He carried her up a sweeping staircase, down a long, shadowed corridor, and kicked open a door. The room was surprisingly warm. A fire roared in the grate, and a copper hip bath was steaming in the center of the rug. Standing beside it was a woman who looked as severe as the architecture. She wore a stark black dress and had a scar running from her lip to her chin. "Mrs. Halloway," Julian said, depositing Selina onto a chaise lounge. "She is frozen and hysterical. Clean her up. Burn the dress." "Yes, Your Grace," the woman said. Her voice was scratchy, unused. Julian turned to leave, but Selina found a spark of defiance. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why save me? If my father is a traitor, I am ruined anyway. You gain nothing but a scandal by keeping me." Julian paused at the door, his hand on the brass latch. He didn't turn back to face her. Ruined things are often the most valuable, Selina, because no one else looks closely enough to see what they are truly hiding. He slammed the door. The next morning, Selina awoke in a bed large enough to sleep 4 people. The sheets were crisp, high-quality linen, smelling of lavender and old wood. For a moment, she forgot. Then the memories of the cliffs crashed back into her. She scrambled out of bed. She was wearing a plain white nightgown that wasn't hers. She ran to the window. It was barred. Not with prison bars, but with decorative ironwork that was dense enough to prevent exit. The door clicked open. It wasn't Mrs. Halloway. It was Julian. He was dressed impeccably in a charcoal morning coat, looking as if he hadn't spent the night chasing a woman across the moors. He held a tray with tea and toast. "Eat," he said, setting it on a small table. "I am not hungry." Selina stood her ground, wrapping her arms around herself. "I want to know what you intend to do with me. You said I am collateral. Am I your prisoner, or your—" She couldn't say the word, mistress. Julian poured tea, his movements precise. "You are my wife." The air left the room. "What?" "The ceremony took place 3 days ago by proxy. Your father signed the papers. I signed the papers. In the eyes of God and the Crown, you have been the Duchess of Blackwood since Tuesday." Selina laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "That is impossible. I wasn't there." "You don't need to be there for a transaction, Selina. Only the owners of the asset need to be present." He took a sip of tea, his eyes locking onto hers. "Your father needed the money to flee the country before the treason charge stuck. I gave him enough to get to France. In exchange, I got you." "Why?" she shouted, stepping toward him. "You are the Duke of Blackwood. You could have any woman in England. Why buy the daughter of a traitor?" Julian set the cup down. The china clinked loudly in the silence. He walked toward her, and Selina stepped back until her spine hit the cold glass of the window. He stopped inches from her, looming tall and dangerous. "Because, Selina," he lowered his voice to a whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "I know about the child." Selina's heart stopped. The room spun. No one knew. She had buried that secret 3 years ago in a convent in France. A mistake of youth, a summer romance with a cavalry officer named Silas who had abandoned her. The child had been stillborn, or so the nuns said. It was the source of her shame, the reason she allowed her father to treat her like cattle. "I don't know what you mean," she lied, her voice breaking. Julian reached out, his gloved thumb grazing her jawline. The leather was cool against her feverish skin. "Do not lie to me. I know about Silas Sterling. I know about the convent in Lyon. And I know that Silas is back in England." He leaned in closer, his lips brushing her ear. "He isn't just a cavalry officer, Selina. He is the man blackmailing your father. He is the one who framed him for treason. And now that your father is gone, Silas will come for you." Selina trembled, tears spilling over. "So you trapped me here to—" "What? Hand me over to him." Julian pulled back, looking at her with an expression that was part fury, part possessiveness. "No. I trapped you here because Silas Sterling took something from me a long time ago, and I am going to use you as the bait to kill him." He turned and walked to the door. "You have the run of the house, except the west wing. Dinner is at 7. Do not be late." As the lock clicked shut from the outside, Selina sank to the floor. She wasn't just a wife. She was a weapon in a war she didn't understand. And she was married to a man who looked at her, not with love, but with the cold calculation of a hunter setting a trap. But Selina Vance had not ridden toward the cliffs to die, only to be used as bait. She looked at the heavy fireplace poker. She looked at the window. "Let the game begin, Your Grace." A week passed at Blackwood Manor. It was a week defined by oppressive silence and a routine that felt like a slow strangulation. Selina was not a prisoner in the traditional sense. The doors were unlocked during the day. She could walk the windswept cliffs, though never without the massive Irish wolfhound, Brutus, that Julian had assigned to guard her. She ate solitary luncheons in the cavernous dining hall, under the judging stares of ancestral portraits, but she saw almost nothing of her husband. Julian the Duke was a ghost in his own home. He spent his days riding out to the tenant farms or locked in his study. They met only at dinner, highly formal affairs where the length of the mahogany table felt like a canyon between them. "The soup is excellent, Your Grace," Selina would offer, testing the waters. "It is adequate," he would reply, not looking up from his plate. He was waiting, and the waiting was driving Selina mad. She began to explore the manor, driven by restless energy and a desperate need to find a weakness in Julian's armor. She found libraries filled with texts on maritime law and ancient history, ballrooms that hadn't seen a dance in a decade, and endless empty guest rooms. But the West Wing remained forbidden. It was separated from the main house by a heavy oak door at the end of the second-floor corridor. There was no keyhole, only a heavy iron handle that refused to budge. Mrs. Halloway, the severe housekeeper, caught Selina staring at it one rainy afternoon. "There is nothing for you past that threshold, Your Grace," Mrs. Halloway said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. It was the first time she had used Selina's title without a hint of mockery. "Why is it locked?" Selina asked, turning. "What is he hiding?" Mrs. Halloway's eyes softened, just for a fraction of a second. "Some grief is too heavy to share, my lady. The Duke carries burdens you cannot imagine. Do not add to them by prying." That night, a thunderstorm battered the coast. The thunder shook the foundations of the manor. Selina couldn't sleep. The image of that locked door taunted her. Julian was out. She had heard him ride off amid the thunderclap an hour ago, a madness she couldn't comprehend. She grabbed a silver candelabra and crept into the hallway. The house groaned around her. She reached the west wing door. She expected it to be locked. She turned the handle. It clicked open. The wind must have shifted the old mechanism. Heart hammering against her ribs, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air here was stale, thick with dust, and the faint, cloying scent of dried flowers. It wasn't a torture chamber or a laboratory. It was a shrine. She walked down a corridor lined with portraits of a young woman, beautiful, laughing, with eyes very much like Julian's. The doors opening off the hallway led to rooms frozen in time. A music room with sheet music, still on the harpsichord, covered in dust. A sitting room with needlepoint half finished. At the end of the hall was a nursery. Selina's breath caught. A rocking horse sat in the corner. A crib was draped in rotting lace. It was a room prepared for a life that never happened. "Get out!" The voice came from the shadows, low and terrifyingly lethal. Selina spun around, nearly dropping the candelabra. Julian was standing in the doorway of the nursery. He was drenched from his ride, water dripping from his riding coat onto the dusty floorboards. His eyes were not the cold voids she was used to. They were blazing with raw, unadulterated fury. "Julian, she stammered, backing away until she hit the crib. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her upper arms. His grip was bruising, hauling her away from the crib as if her very presence contaminated it. "I told you this wing was forbidden," he snarled, shaking her once. "Do you have a death wish, Selina? Or are you just incapable of following orders?" I wanted to know who I married, she cried, adrenaline overriding her fear. She pushed back against his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his soaked shirt. You hold me prisoner, you use me as bait, and you tell me nothing. Who is she? Who is the woman in the paintings? Julian froze. The fury in his eyes fractured into something else. Pain so profound, it looked like physical agony. He looked over her shoulder at the empty crib. My sister, he whispered, the sound ragged. Clara. And this was to be her child's room. He looked back at Selina, and the ice returned, harder than before. She died 5 years ago, because of a man who promised her love and gave her only ruin. A man named Silas Sterling. Selina gasped. The room seemed to shrink. Silas didn't just blackmail her father. He had destroyed Julian's family. Julian released her abruptly, as if touching her burned him. You asked why I bought you, he said, his voice devoid of emotion once more. Silas destroyed the only thing I ever loved. He is going to return for you because he thinks you are weak, just like Clara was. But he is wrong. He stepped close again, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. The scent of rain, horse, and suppressed violence overwhelmed her. You are not weak, Selina. You survived the cliffs. You survived your father. You will survive this. We are going to kill him. Together. For the first time, Selina didn't see a jailer. She saw a man consumed by the same fire that was beginning to burn in her own veins. A fire for retribution. The dynamic in the manor shifted after that night in the West Wing. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was focused. Julian began to speak to her. Not pleasantly, never warmly, but functionally. They were generals planning a campaign. He moved her into a bedroom adjoining his own. For your safety, he claimed, though Selina caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking, a strange hunger in his eyes that had nothing to do with revenge. 3 days later, the first strike came. They were in the library. Julian was teaching Selina how to load a small, pearl-handled pistol. It fits in a reticule, he explained, guiding her hands over the mechanism. His touch was impersonal, clinical, yet Selina found her breath hitching whenever his skin brushed hers. Mrs. Halloway entered, carrying a silver salver with a single letter upon it. The seal was bright red wax, stamped with a flamboyant S. For her grace, Mrs. Halloway said, her lips thinned. The courier said it was urgent. Selina froze. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Bold, sweeping script that she once thought romantic, now just looked arrogant. Julian took the letter before Selina could reach for it. He broke the seal without hesitation. He has no right to address you, Julian murmured, his jaw tight as he scanned the parchment. What does it say? Selina asked, her hand instinctively dropping to her stomach, a phantom pain from years ago resurfacing. Julian tossed the letter onto the desk. It curled as if alive. Read it. Know your enemy. Selina picked it up, her hands shaking. My dearest Selina, I hear you have risen high in the world. A duchess. Who would have thought the little bird I plucked in Lyon would fly so high? I was distressed to hear of your noble father's sudden departure. It leaves certain financial matters unsettled. Matters I am sure your new, formidable husband would prefer to remain private. As would you. We wouldn't want the beau monde to know about our sweet summer in France, would we? Or the tragic little consequence of it. I desire a reunion. The Blackwood Autumn Ball is approaching. I shall attend. Save a dance for me, my love. We have much to discuss regarding the debts of the past. Yours in eternal devotion, Silas Selina felt sick. The casual cruelty, the veiled threats. He was threatening to expose the convent, the pregnancy. If that became public knowledge, Julian's reputation would be destroyed alongside hers. A duke cannot be married to ruined goods. "He's coming here," she whispered. "To Blackwood." "He is arrogant," Julian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He picked up the pistol Selina had been holding and snapped the barrel into place with a loud click. "He thinks he is walking into a sty to confront sheep. He doesn't know he is walking into a wolf's den." Julian looked at her. For the first time since the cliffs, he touched her gently. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you afraid?" "Yes," Selina admitted, looking into his dark eyes. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Use it. Hate him, Selina. Hate him for what he did to you in France. Hate him for what he did to my sister. Let that hate burn everything else away." Selina felt a strange surge of power. She wasn't alone this time. She had the most dangerous man in England at her side. "What do we do?" she asked. Julian smiled, a chilling expression that didn't reach his eyes. "We throw a party." The Blackwood Autumn Ball was traditionally the highlight of the Cornish social season, though it hadn't been held since Clara's death. Its revival sparked a frenzy of gossip in London. Why now? Was the silent Duke finally rejoining society with his mysterious new bride? The night of the ball, the manor was transformed. The gloom was banished by thousands of wax candles in crystal chandeliers. The great hall was filled with flowers brought in from hothouses in London. Upstairs, Selina stared at her reflection. Julian had chosen her gown. It was emerald green silk, cut daringly low, with black lace overlay that looked like delicate spiderwebs. It was a dress meant to draw every eye, a dress for bait. On her dressing table sat a velvet box. Inside was a magnificent diamond and emerald necklace, the Blackwood family jewels. Julian entered the room via the adjoining door. He stopped, his breath catching audibly. He was dressed in severe black evening wear, the starkness only emphasizing his striking, harsh attractiveness. He walked behind her, taking the necklace from the box. As he fastened the heavy, cold gems around her throat, his knuckles brushed the nape of her neck. The air in the room thickened with unspoken tension. They were co-conspirators, husband and wife, in name only. Yet the physical pull between them was becoming undeniable. "You look exquisite," he said, his voice rough, "like a beautiful, poisonous flower." "Is that a compliment, Your Grace?" Selina asked, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Tonight, Selina, it is the highest compliment I can give. You must be irresistible. You must draw him in so completely he never sees the blade." He reached down and lifted the hem of her heavy silk skirt. Selina gasped at the intimacy of the gesture, but he was only reaching for the satin garter strapped to her thigh. He slid a small, wicked-looking dagger into the sheath attached to it. His hand lingered on her thigh for a second too long before he pulled away. "If I fail tonight," he murmured, not looking at her. "If he gets past me, use it. Do not hesitate. Aim for the neck or the heart." "You won't fail," Selina said fiercely, surprised by her own conviction. He offered her his arm. "Shall we go down, my lady? The wolves are waiting." The ball was a blur of colour and noise. Selina, Lady Blackwood, was presented to society. She danced with squires and barons, smiling until her cheeks ached, deflecting prying questions about her sudden marriage and her father's disappearance. Julian was never far. He stood on the periphery of the ballroom, a dark sentinel, his eyes scanning the crowd, watching every door. Just after midnight, the atmosphere shifted. A cold draught seemed to sweep through the room. Selina was catching her breath near the terrace doors when a shadow detached itself from the crowd. "Lady Selina, or should I say, Your Grace. The voice was smooth, like velvet soaked in arsenic. She turned. Silas Sterling had not changed in 3 years. He was still devastatingly handsome, with golden hair and eyes the color of a summer sky, eyes that hid a complete lack of soul. He was dressed more flamboyantly than the other men, a peacock among crows. Selina's heart hammered against her ribs, but she remembered Julian's words. Use the fear. Turn it into hate. Silas, she said coldly, raising her chin. You have nerve showing your face here. He laughed, stepping closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive brandy and cheap perfume. Come now, my sweet. Is that any way to greet an old friend? We share so much history. He glanced toward Julian, who was across the room, currently trapped in conversation with an elderly marchioness. Does your grim watchdog know just how close we were? He knows everything, Selina lied, hoping her voice didn't shake. He knows you are a blackmailer and a leech. Everything? Silas's smile widened, becoming predatory. I doubt that very much. Julian Thorne is a man of absolutes, black and white. He wouldn't handle the shades of grey that define your past. He offered his hand. Dance with me, Selina, for old time's sake, before things get unpleasant. Selina knew this was the moment. She had to lure him away from the crowd, toward the terrace where Julian had planned the ambush. She placed her gloved hand in his. His touch made her skin crawl. They moved onto the floor for a waltz. Silas danced beautifully, sweeping her through the turns. It was sickening. You seem tense, Silas murmured in her ear. Are you worried about the money? Don't be. Your husband has plenty. I'm sure he'll pay to keep your little convent secret buried. Though it is a shame about the baby. Stillborn, wasn't it? Such a tragedy. Selina stumbled slightly. The pain of that memory was a physical wound. You are a monster to bring that up. Am I? Silas spun her toward the terrace doors. They were nearing the exit. I think the real monster is the man who lied to you to get you into his bed, and I don't mean me. They danced out onto the stone terrace. The night air was cool. The music from inside sounded distant. They were alone in the shadows. What are you talking about? Selina demanded, trying to pull her hand away, but his grip tightened painfully. Silas stopped dancing. His charming mask dropped, revealing the sneering cruelty beneath. Did Blackwood tell you why he hates me? About poor, fragile Clara? He told me you destroyed her, Selina spat. I gave her a glimpse of life. She was too weak to handle it. But you were stronger, Selina. You survived me. He leaned in close, his whiskey breath on her face. And that's why your baby survived too. The world stopped. The music faded. The wind died. Selina stared at him, unable to breathe. What? You heard me, Silas whispered gleefully, enjoying the devastation on her face. The nuns in Lyon? They are very pious, but they are also very poor. A little gold buys a lot of lies. Your son didn't die, Selina. He was born healthy and screaming. I paid them to tell you he was dead. I paid them to take him away. A scream tried to tear its way out of Selina's throat, but it was strangled by pure horror. Her child, her son, alive. For 3 years she had mourned a ghost, while this monster had— Where is he? She hissed, grabbing the lapels of his coat, the hidden dagger forgotten. Where is my son? Silas laughed. Oh, he's safe, as long as you and your new husband cooperate. You see, Selina, you aren't just bait. You're the leverage. A shadow fell over them. Julian stepped out from behind a large stone planter, his pistol drawn, pointed directly at Silas's heart. Step away from my wife, Sterling, Julian growled, his voice ice. Silas didn't seem intimidated. He just smiled at Julian over Selina's trembling shoulder. Ah, the avenging angel arrives. Right on cue. Silas pushed Selina toward Julian. She stumbled, catching herself on Julian's arm. She looked up at her husband, the man who had saved her from the cliffs, the man who claimed to be her ally. "Julian," she whispered, her voice breaking with betrayal. "Did you know?" Julian kept his eyes on Silas, his gun steady, but Selina felt him tense. "Know what?" "About Lion," Silas shouted, backing away toward the garden steps, knowing Julian wouldn't shoot with Selina in the crossfire. "Did you tell her, Your Grace? Did you tell her that you didn't just buy her debt? You bought the convent's debt too. You own the very nuns who sold her child." Silas jumped the stone balustrade and disappeared into the dark gardens below, his laughter echoing in the night. Julian didn't chase him. He'd lowered the gun slowly, turning to face Selina. His expression was unreadable, a mask of stone. Selina backed away from him, horrified. "You knew," she accused, tears finally spilling over, hot and fast. "You knew my baby was alive. That's why you married me. Not for revenge. You wanted the heir that Silas hid." "Selina, listen to me," Julian started, reaching for her. "Do not touch me!" she screamed, slapping his hand away. The sound echoed sharply on the terrace. "You are worse than he is. He is a snake, but you are the devil." She turned and ran back into the ballroom, pushing through the startled guests, blinded by tears, leaving the silent Duke alone on the terrace, with the truth finally out in the open. Selina did not run to the cliffs this time. That path was for cowards, and she was no longer the frightened girl who had fled her father's house. She was a mother. She ran toward the stables. Behind her, the Blackwood Autumn Ball continued, a grotesque carnival of laughter and music that felt like a mockery of her shattering world. She pushed through the heavy service doors, bursting out into the courtyard. The storm had finally broken in full force. Rain lashed down in freezing sheets, instantly soaking her emerald gown, turning the delicate silk into a heavy, suffocating weight that dragged at her legs. She didn't care. She tore the heavy diamond necklace from her throat, the collar Julian had placed there, and threw it into the mud. It disappeared into the darkness with a wet thud. Alive. The word echoed in her mind, syncing with the frantic beating of her heart. Leo is alive. She reached the stables, her breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. The massive wooden doors were heavy, but adrenaline gave her the strength of 10 women. She heaved one open and stumbled into the warmth and scent of hay and horse flesh. The stable was dimly lit by a single lantern hanging from a beam. The horses shifted nervously in their stalls, sensing the storm and the intruder's panic. Selina ran to Mercury's stall. The bay stallion nickered, rolling his eyes at her sodden appearance. "Shh, boy," she sobbed, her hands shaking so violently she could barely lift the heavy saddle from its rack. "We have to go. We have to find him." She threw the saddle onto the horse's back, but she fumbled with the girth strap. Her fingers were slippery with rain and tears. She couldn't get the buckle to catch. "Damn it," she screamed, yanking at the leather. "You will never get it tight enough like that. You'll slip halfway to the coast." The voice came from the stable entrance, deep, calm, and maddeningly controlled. Selina spun around. Julian stood there, blocking the only exit. He was drenched, his black hair plastered to his forehead, water dripping from the hem of his tailcoat. He didn't look like a duke. He looked like a man who had walked through hell to get to this door. "Get away from me," Selina hissed. She abandoned the saddle and grabbed the nearest weapon she could find, a pitchfork leaning against a hay bale. She raised it, the sharp iron tines gleaming in the lantern light. Julian didn't flinch. He took a step into the stable, closing the door behind him to shut out the wind. "Selina, put it down." "I will kill you," she warned, her voice cracking. "I swear it, Julian. You lied to me. You let me believe my baby was dead while you negotiated for him like he was a piece of land. Was he just part of the contract? Did you get a discount on the debts because you acquired the heir?" "It wasn't a negotiation," Julian said, taking another step. He walked straight toward the pitchfork until the metal tips were pressing against the ruined damp fabric of his white shirt. "And I didn't know." "Silas said, Silas is a liar," Julian roared, his composure finally cracking. The sound was so loud it made Mercury jump. "I didn't know for 3 years, Selina. I found out 5 days ago." Selina faltered, the pitchfork wavering slightly. 5 days? When I bought your father's debts, I seized his private correspondence," Julian explained, his words coming fast and urgent. "I found a letter from the Mother Superior in Lyon. It was dated last month. She was demanding more hush money from Silas. That was the first time I knew the child had survived." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Selina screamed, tears blinding her. 5 days. We slept in the same room. You strapped a knife to my leg. You looked me in the eye and told me we were partners, and all the while you knew my son was out there." "Because Silas has spies!" Julian shouted back, grabbing the shaft of the pitchfork, ignoring the way the metal dug into his palm. "Even in this house. If I had told you, Selina, you would have run to him, or you would have panicked. You are not a liar. You have no poker face. If Silas saw hope in your eyes, he would have known the game was up." He ripped the pitchfork from her grip and threw it aside. It clattered loudly against the cobblestones. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip bruising, shaking her once to make her focus. "Listen to me. Silas kept the boy as leverage against your father. But with your father gone, the boy is a loose end. If Silas knew that I knew, he would have no reason to keep the child alive. He would have eliminated the evidence before fleeing the country." Selina went still. The horror of his words sank in. "He would have killed Leo?" "Yes," Julian whispered, his face inches from hers. "So I had to play his game. I had to let him think he still held the cards. I had to let him think I was ignorant, so he would feel safe enough to bring the boy into the open." "Into the open?" Selina asked, clutching his lapels. "Where is he, Julian? Where is my son?" "I sent my head of security, a man named Kane, to France the night I found the letters," Julian said. "He extracted the boy from the convent 2 days ago. They are en route to England now. They were supposed to arrive at the safe house in Dover tomorrow morning." "Supposed to?" Selina caught the shift in his tone. The terror returned, colder than the rain. Julian's face darkened, a look of pure, unadulterated fear crossing his features for the first time. Silas's taunt on the terrace. He wasn't just gloating. He knows. He knows I moved the boy. Julian released her and moved to his own horse, Titan, a massive black charger. He began to saddle the beast with terrifying efficiency. "Silas isn't here to dance, Selina. He's here to distract us. While we were waltzing, his men were riding to intercept Kane's carriage." Selina watched him. The pieces of the puzzle slammed into place. The tension, the secrecy, the coldness. It hadn't been indifference. It had been a desperate, lonely strategy to save a child he had never met, belonging to a woman he had barely known. "Where are they?" Selina asked, her voice steadying. She turned back to Mercury, her fingers finally finding the dexterity to buckle the girth strap. "The coast road." 10 miles north," Julian said, tightening Titan's saddle. "It's the only route from the port in this weather. If Silas left the ball, he is riding to meet them. We have to get there first." He swung himself up onto Titan's back, the horse dancing impatiently. He looked down at her. "Stay here, Selina. It will be dangerous. Silas will be desperate." Selina swung herself into the saddle. She was wearing a ruined ball gown, satin slippers, and diamonds in her hair, but she sat the horse with the authority of a cavalry officer. She looked at Julian, her eyes blazing with a ferocity that matched the storm outside. "He is my son," she said, her voice cutting through the sound of the rain on the roof. "I am not the collateral anymore, Julian, and I am not the bait. I am a mother. And if you try to leave me behind, I will ride to hell and back to follow you." Julian looked at her. For a moment, the silence stretched between them. Then, the darkness in his eyes cleared, replaced by a fierce, undeniable admiration. He didn't see a victim. He saw an equal. "Then ride fast, Duchess," he said, wheeling his horse around. "Tonight we do not stop for anything." They burst out of the stables together. The wind hit them like a physical blow. The world was a maelstrom of black and grey. Thunder rattled the ground, shaking the very bones of the earth. But neither of them slowed. Julian took the lead, his black coat blending into the night. But Selina was right beside him. Her emerald dress whipped behind her like a banner of war. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The rhythm of the horses was their language now, a frantic, thundering cadence that ate up the miles. Selina leaned low over Mercury's neck, shielding her eyes from the stinging rain. Every shadow looked like a trap. Every branch looked like a man with a gun. But she wasn't afraid. The fear had burned away in the stable, replaced by a cold, hard purpose. "Hold on, Leo," she prayed silently to the son she hadn't seen in 3 years. "Mama is coming, and I am bringing the devil himself with me." As they crested the final ridge before the coast road, a flash of lightning illuminated the scene below. Selina gasped. It was a scene of carnage. A carriage lay on its side, the wheels shattered, sliding precariously in the mud near the cliff edge. 2 bodies lay motionless on the road, Julian's guards. And there, standing silhouetted against the raging white foam of the ocean, were 4 men on horseback. One of them was Silas, and in his arms, struggling against a heavy brown cloak, was a small, terrified bundle. "Silas!" Julian roared, the sound tearing from his throat, louder than the thunder. He kicked Titan forward, plunging down the muddy slope. Selina followed, her heart stopping in her chest. They were in time. But they were also on the edge of the world, and the ground was crumbling beneath them. The storm that had been threatening all week finally broke. Rain lashed down in sheets, turning the coast road into a treacherous river of mud. The wind howled off the ocean, screaming like a banshee. Selina and Julian rode side by side. They pushed their horses to the limit, galloping through the blackness, guided only by the occasional flash of lightning. "There!" Julian shouted over the wind. Ahead, illuminated by a jagged fork of lightning, was a scene of chaos. A carriage had been run off the road, its wheels shattered. 2 men lay motionless in the mud. Julian's guards, and standing near the edge of the cliff, the very same cliffs where Selina had tried to end her life weeks ago, was a group of men on horseback. Silas was there, and in his arms, struggling against a heavy cloak, was a small child. "Silas!" Julian roared, pulling Titan up so hard the horse reared, its hooves pawing the air. Silas turned. The rain plastered his golden hair to his skull, making him look like a drowned rat. He smiled, shouting over the roar of the ocean. "You're late, Your Grace. I was just about to see if the little lion can swim." He held the bundle out over the precipice. Selina screamed, pulling Mercury to a halt. "No, Silas, please. Take me. Take the money. Don't hurt him." "The money is gone, Selina," Silas yelled back, his voice cracking with madness. "Your husband ruined me. He froze my accounts in London this morning. If I go down, I take his prize with me." "He is not a prize," Selina shrieked. "He is a boy. He is innocent." "He is a bastard," Silas spat. "Just like I was, and nobody cares about bastards." Julian dismounted slowly. He held his hands up, showing he held no weapon. "Let him go, Silas," Julian said, his voice carrying an eerie calm through the storm. "This is between you and me. It always has been. You want to hurt me? Kill me. I am standing right here." "No," Selina gasped, reaching for Julian, but he stepped away, walking steadily toward Silas and the cliff edge. "You think I won't shoot you?" Silas pulled a pistol from his belt with one hand, still clutching the struggling child with the other. "I think you are a coward," Julian said, continuing to walk. "You killed my sister because you were too weak to fight for her. You blackmailed a desperate woman because you were too weak to earn your own fortune. And now you hold a 3-year-old boy because you are too terrified to face a man." Silas's face twisted in rage. He leveled the pistol at Julian's chest. "Say hello to Clara for me." Bang! The shot cracked through the thunder. Julian stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. Blood bloomed dark against his white shirt. "Julian!" Selina screamed. But Julian didn't fall. He stayed on his feet, swaying slightly. Silas laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Tough one, aren't you? Let's try the head." He cocked the pistol again. But in his arrogance, Silas had forgotten one thing. He had forgotten the woman. While Julian had drawn Silas's attention, Selina had slid from her horse. She had moved through the shadows of the carriage wreckage. And she remembered what Julian had told her in the bedroom before the ball. Aim for the neck or the heart. She didn't have a clear shot at his heart. He was holding Leo in front of him, but his neck was exposed. Selina raised the small pearl-handled pistol. Her hand was steady. The fear was gone. There was only the cold, hard clarity of a mother protecting her young. She pulled the trigger. The shot hit Silas in the throat. His eyes went wide with shock. He gurgled, his hand flying to his neck. His grip on the child loosened. Leo began to slip from his arms, sliding toward the abyss. "No!" Selina and Julian moved at the same time. Julian, ignoring the bullet in his shoulder, lunged forward with a burst of desperate strength. He dove onto the wet grass, reaching out over the edge. Silas toppled backward, falling silently into the churning black water below. Julian's hand closed around the back of the child's cloak, just as the boy went over. For a second, they hung there, Julian half over the cliff, holding the weight of the child, his blood slicking the mud. "Selina!" Julian gritted out, his strength failing. Selina was there. She grabbed Julian's belt, digging her heels into the mud, pulling with everything she had. "I have you!" she screamed. "I have you both!" With a heave that tore the muscles in her back, she dragged them backward. Julian hauled the child up, curling his body around the small boy to protect him from the mud. They collapsed in a heap on the safe, solid ground. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain and the sobbing of the child. Selina crawled over. She pulled the cloak back. A pair of terrified green eyes looked up at her. He had her nose. He had her chin. "Leo," she whispered, choking on the name. "It's Mama. I'm here." The boy, cold and frightened, buried his face in her chest. Selina wrapped her arms around him, a feeling of completeness washing over her that she hadn't felt in 3 years. Then she looked at Julian. He was lying on his back, his face pale, rain washing the blood from his shoulder. He was watching them. And for the first time, the Duke of Blackwood was smiling. A real, genuine smile. "He looks like you," Julian whispered. Selina shifted, reaching out to take Julian's hand. She pressed it to her cheek, mixing her tears with the rain on his skin. "You saved him," she said. "You took a bullet for him." "I would take 1,000, Julian rasped, his eyes closing. "To see you look at me." Like that. Don't you dare close your eyes, Julian Thorne, Selina commanded, her voice fierce with love. You are not allowed to die. We are going home. All three of us. Epilogue. 6 months later. The spring sunshine in Cornwall was soft and warm, a stark contrast to the winter storms. The cliffs were covered in wildflowers, yellow and purple, swaying in the gentle breeze. Selina sat on a stone bench in the garden, watching. On the lawn, a small boy with sandy hair was running, shrieking with laughter. Chasing him, looking far less dignified than a duke should, was Julian. Julian's arm was healed, though he would always carry the scar. He caught Leo, swinging the boy up onto his shoulders. Leo grabbed Julian's hair, giggling uncontrollably. "Higher, Papa! Higher!" Selina's heart swelled. Papa. It had taken time and patience, but the bond between the silent, wounded man and the abandoned boy had grown into something unbreakable. Julian walked over to the bench, carrying Leo. He sat down beside Selina, wrapping his free arm around her waist. "The tutor says he is reading at a 6-year-old level," Julian noted with pride. "He is clever." "He gets that from his mother," Selina teased, leaning her head on Julian's shoulder. "And his stubbornness," Julian countered, kissing the top of her head. He shifted, looking out at the ocean. The darkness that had shrouded Blackwood Manor for so long was gone. The windows were open. The silence was broken by laughter. "You know," Julian said softly, "I used to think these cliffs were the end of the world." Selina looked at him, tracing the line of his jaw. "And now?" Julian looked at her, then at Leo, his eyes full of light. "Now," he said, "I think they are just the beginning." And that is the story of Lady Selina and the silent Duke of Blackwood. From a desperate escape on the cliffs to a love that healed the deepest wounds, they proved that sometimes the person chasing you isn't trying to capture you, they are trying to save you. I hope you enjoyed this dramatic retelling. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. What do you think? Was Julian right to keep the secret about the child, to protect Selina? Or should he have told her immediately? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a thrilling tale about a forbidden royal romance coming up next week that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching.